Hey guys, my name is Izo. You might know me as the guy who hit Challenger playing almost solely Maokai top. I'm here today to teach you about the strategy that I developed in order to reach Challenger playing a champion that was widely seen as an F tier pick, or even a troll pick. If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more future content, and to let me know that you want more things like this from me. Also, if you want to ask me questions at any time, you can join my Discord in the link below, or come ask me during my streams at twitch.tv/Aizolol. Now without further wait, let's get into it. Let's start with the Rune Page. This is probably the most important part of what makes me successful in my early lane phase, which is where Maokai is weakest. I start with Aftershock over Grasp. You might ask, but Izo, Grasp synergizes with Maokai by giving him max HP every time you proc it. Doesn't that work very well with tanks? While that is correct, Maokai doesn't have a safe way to proc Grasp reliably in almost any lane matchups. Grasp is a rune designed to be extremely powerful in the early lane phase trading for people who can proc it multiple times from a safe distance, or for those who have very strong early trading in general. Maokai has neither range nor a reliable escape pattern in his early levels, so even if you do take it, you will still likely be losing trades in the matchups where you would feel like taking it. Aftershock, however, is an incredibly powerful tool for Maokai. He has 3 separate abilities that can activate Aftershock, so if you miss one of them, you aren't gonna die. Aftershock gives a huge armor MR nuke on activation, which is going to give Maokai needed extra tank in order to survive when you are making engagement plays. The amount of extra defense you gain will likely allow you to get an extra spell rotation off, which in turn will give you another passive heal auto, which can mean the difference between a won and a lost fight. Next, to the minor resolve runes. Demolish is a very good cover-up to Maokai's weak turret push capabilities. If Maokai is not taking Demolish, the opposing laner can essentially roam around the map or leave the lane unpunished because Maokai has terrible turret take without it, due to him not having high AP or AD. Demolish will allow you to take plates in the early lane phase if your laner leaves at a poor time, or if you manage to kill them. Demolish is also super beneficial in the mid to late game to speed up your team's overall rotation speed around the map in taking objectives. Next, Conditioning. Conditioning may seem like a very mediocre rune when you look at it. Oh wow, 9 armor and magic resist. But when it also gives a 5% increase to armor and magic resist, overall, it is actually quite beneficial. It will make more sense when I show you the amount of resistances that I build to get extreme benefit from conditioning. It also synergizes with Aftershock's resistance nuke, making you much more tanky in those high pressure moments. Next, Overgrowth over Revitalize. This one has been a point of contention for me for a long time. Overgrowth and Revitalize both provide a very similar amount of benefit during the game. Overgrowth, however, will 1. Grant a larger health pool in general, which is good versus the amount of true damage that is prevalent in League today. 2. It gives more HP for your armor and magic resist to be able to apply to. And 3. Overgrowth will also marginally synergize with Overgrowth to be able to take turrets down just that little bit faster. Maokai's passive also synergizes with increased health pool, so the benefit of extra healing that Revitalize would give you over Overgrowth is pretty minimal when you get all the other benefits. On to the secondary rune tree. I run Inspiration over the Sorcery tree because the Sorcery tree generally gives benefit for late game scaling options, which Maokai doesn't really need. In the Inspiration tree, I run a combo rune of Biscuits and Time Warp Tonic. I run Time Warp Tonic because I will be first buying Corrupting Potion as soon as the game starts so as to give me a massive early game sustain for Maokai's weak laning phase. Time Warp Tonic does the exact same thing with the Biscuit deliveries as well. Biscuit deliveries also increase your maximum mana pool whether you sell them or use them in lane, which will give you a little bit of extra mana to work with. Also, because I don't sell my Corrupting Pot until pretty late into the game, I should not have extreme mana pool issues throughout the whole game, mostly just a minor inconvenience. Finally, for the flat stats that I take, I always choose 10% scaling CDR over adaptive or attack speed, because Maokai has very bad AP scalings, and an extra 9 AP will bring tiny benefit overall to an extra 10% CDR when my build path doesn't have much CDR in it overall. Next, I will take double armor or MR based on matchups. This is especially effective when your opposing laner is the same damage type as the enemy jungler. For example, facing Garen in lane with the J4 jungle is a very good matchup for double armor. In some cases, however, I will take double MR against an AD laner like Aurelia to deal with her high amount of magic damage from her passive, especially when she has an AP jungler. Or take double armor against an Akali when she has an AD jungler. This is a way to mitigate the effectiveness of mixed damage champions by stuffing your runes with a resistance type that you won't be rushing with your items. Onward to the build. Regardless of matchup, I will first item Corrupting Potion every single game in order to synergize with my Time Warp Tonic. I will state my early game build path for a few different champion classes. Firstly, AD Conqueror users or AD healers. Grab a Bramble Vest as your first back. Bramble is an incredibly gold efficient item. It gives you armor, a damage reflect, and grievous wounds, all for 1000 gold. After Bramble, you want to pick up Ninja Tabbies. Maokai has a fairly low base move speed, and getting boots as early as you can is very powerful for keeping Maokai out of harm's way, as well as giving you that extra chasing power to keep laying on the damage. After Tabbies, it's time to move towards Sunfire Cape. I will pick up the Bammy Cinder first, as it will be a little damage tick every time I am on top of the enemy laner, as well as give me extra wave clear benefit. After Sunfire Cape, I will grab a Spirit Visage as a standard. However, if the enemy already has Grievous Wounds, or is clearly building towards it soon, you can look at other MR options like Adaptive Helm for multi-hit mages, or Abyssal Mask when you have a lot of magic damage on your team. This is your core build state. Having Sunfire, Boots, Spirit Visage, and Bramble is what I pick up in almost 90% of my games. From here, the rest of the build path becomes extremely situational, and I will get to that after I lay out the other starting paths. The next situation is facing an AD laner that is not a Conqueror user, and is not an inherent healer. Ignore the Bramble Vest and go straight for Tabbies into Sunfire Cape. After this, go for Spirit Visage as a base, or like before, another MR option if they itemize for Grievous Wounds. Finally, on to AP matchups. First back will be a Spectre's Cowl if they are a Poke Mage, or Mercury's Treads if they are a CC Mage. After your first buy, you will pick up the other item that you didn't get on your first back. Upgrade Spectres into Visage as a base, and Adaptive if up against multi-hit mages like Cassiopeia, Rumble, or Rise. After your completed MR item, pick up Sunfire Cape. You might notice that Sunfire Cape is a completely core item to Maokai for supplementing his otherwise poor wave clear and sticking damage. Once again, you are now at your core build for the game, and everything from here is situational. So it's time to cover all the possible situational paths that I take in my games. Something to note, I tend to not upgrade my Bramble into Thornmail until I have finished all of my other items. The first situational item path is the anti-dive, anti-burst path. This is for when you have one or two hyper carries on your team that are relatively squishy, and you need to keep them alive against an enemy team that has one or two assassins that can blow them up instantly. After your core, you'll pick up Locket and then Gargoyles. You will use this combination of doubling your health pool and using Locket in order to give your team a big shield to survive initial burst and win teamfights. The second situational path is anti-dive sustain. Sometimes there are dive comps you will face that aren't necessarily burst assassins. Or your support may have built Locket, which would make your Locket less efficient to run. In this case, Knight's Vow is an incredible option to give your carries damage reduction that you take instead, because Maokai has plenty of healing to make up for the small amounts of damage he'll be taking for his carries. Also, Zeke's works very well with Knights. Maokai in the late game becomes less of a tank and more of a peeling support in this scenario. Third situational path, Utility Chase Down. Righteous Glory is the obvious choice when this is what you need. When facing champions that are always just out of reach, this is the move. If you still somehow need more armor and more chase down, Deadman's Plate is another viable movement armor option. Fourth situational path, you need more tank. Sometimes you don't need more utility. Sometimes you're just getting blown up by mages because Maokai gets less armor than MR in general, and there are very few true MR options. You probably will want to build either Adaptive Helm or Abyssal Mask, or Spirit Visage if you didn't pick that up originally. The fifth situational path is for when you don't know what you need. Sometimes you simply don't know what situation you're in. My generic post-core build path is to pick up Righteous Glory, then move towards Abyssal or Adaptive, and then finish off with a Gargoyle Stoneplate. That's it for the build. Now it's time to move over how to actually play the lane and mid-game to late game. The way that I play my lane phase seems very counterintuitive to the way many people prefer to play the game. I will almost always play overly safe. Maokai is an incredibly weak champion in his first 3 levels, and you simply don't want to fight people during them. I sit back in the early levels and pick off minions with my Q when I feel safe enough to do so. When you reach level 4, you have now hit the point where you can have winning trades. The trade pattern for Maokai is to set up a bush sapling, W onto your opponent, walk so that they are between you and the sapling, then Q them so that they are knocked toward the sapling, then walk away and wait till your combo is back up to do it again. Because you have Aftershock, you will be very tanky during this trade pattern, and your base damages are actually quite substantial for short trades. Also, many people will get very greedy when they see a Maokai at low health under turret. If you know that you won't die if they try to dive you, be extra tempting so as to punish their greed and get your free solo kill when they foolishly try. You will be showered in missing pings from your teammates, wondering how Maokai just solo killed Darius. Don't forget to actively be looking for bot lane teleport plays that can snowball your team into a lead. The loss of 1, 2, or even 3 waves is negligible for Maokai if he gets his bot lane a successful TP gank. The power of boosting your bot lane's gold, as well as their mental, will likely be way more effective than teleporting to lane to get a wave or 2. For the mid-game playstyle, obtain vision control around whatever side of the map your team is playing around. When you don't have teleport up, you want to make sure your side lane isn't getting shoved in on, then roam around with your team, getting vision control and playing for picks. Maokai's saplings are a very strong tool in the mid-game for obtaining vision control. Having saplings means that you and your team do not have to face check bushes. Also, saplings are unaffected by pink wards, so you can keep vision in brush the enemy has pinked. Make use of your saplings as a tool for controlling objectives. If your sapling isn't on cooldown while you're roaming around the map, you are missing out on almost a minute of potential vision control each cast. When you and your team are taking Baron, Drake, or turrets, and you don't want to risk a 50-50 smite fight or a risky dive, use your ultimate preemptively to make the enemy team either hard commit into hard CC, or back off of the objective. Also, when the enemy team is taking Baron, Drake, or turrets, you can force panic in the enemy team. Some of them will likely run away from your ult so as not to get CC'd, effectively splitting up fights for easy wins for your team. In the mid-game, Maokai is very likely to be tanky, as the enemies do not have effective tank busting items yet, like Mortal Reminder or Void Staff. So feel a little risky with your dives. You are an incredibly powerful teamfight force at this point of the game. On to the late game playstyle. Maokai is way less of a super tank in the late game due to most champions at this point having their anti-tank items. If a free pick is spotted, you probably want to go all in and catch them out for free. Engaging in a big fight that could go 50-50 is very risky in the late game. Your number one priority in the late game is making sure you are sticking on your carries and peeling them hard. If your damage dealers die past the 35-minute mark, you are not going to be able to stop a push on your own from the enemy team. Sometimes the right call isn't the correct call. You might know exactly what your team should do next and ping to move towards there, but ultimately, you can't control your teammates. It is better to be 5-man on a poor decision than 3-man on the best choice. So keep that in mind when your team is grouping up in the wrong lane. Just go with them so that you minimize the chances of them getting caught in a 4v5.